You're with Johnny Vedmore on today's News Talk, TNT.
Thomas Matthew Crooks, a disaffected 20-year-old, is being touted as a lone gunman in the assassination attempt on Donald Trump. What are your thoughts on the case, and do you believe the official narrative?
Well, it may be the case. I mean, it's certainly possible. The problem is the worst people in the world for determining what actually happened are not only in charge of the investigation, but appear to be in the process of, if not an outright cover-up, at least obfuscating what they know and deliberately creating this information black hole about the man who shot the president of the United States in the face in broad daylight. This is a situation where they were at the shooter's house for 4 hours before they disclosed his name. That means that if they were at his house, they have his router. If they have his router, they have his IP address. If they have his IP address, they have every single web search this person ever did. They have every Google search, every how do you make a bomb? We were hearing now that there was an explosives detonator potentially, and all this. People don't just wake up in the middle of the night one day at 20 years old and decide that they're going to shoot the president of the United States in a sniper assassin maneuver on a rooftop when he's coming to visit their hometown. They get radicalized through communities online. Now, I'm not, this is something that we know the national security state thinks of all the time because they're constantly finding communities to target for censorship and surveillance. So the fact is, in this case, it's obvious this kid had a network of people online who he was communicating with. We're told he was a loner. He was bullied in high school. He had previously threatened to shoot up the school. This is what his classmates say. So that suggests that he was probably on the radar of local or federal law enforcement to begin with. And, these loner types, they go online to find a haven of like-mindeds, to find people who will accept them. If they happen to be unfortunate looking, they can have an anonymous account, or there's a lot more comfort for these types online than there is in the analog world. And so you have this situation where it's almost a total certainty that this person had a network online that he was in group chats with, that he was communicating with on social media, who he was following, who he follows, and what those communications were are all a total information black hole, coming up on a week later. So there's a lot more there, but I can pause.
Yeah, I definitely dig what you're saying there, because we know from the agents we used to be on World of Warcraft at once upon a time, 15 years ago, looking to recruit people. And we also hear that Thomas Matthew Crooks himself made comments on the Steam gaming platform where he said that this would be his premiere. This one date would be his premiere. So, it's clear that they're still involved in these platforms, and there's a lot of information that we can gather from that. Now, how can the public get more evidence and information from the authorities, or will those in power aim to hide everything related to the case which isn't already in the public arena?
Well, it appears they're already trying to hide everything about the case. When there was the January 6th event here in the U.S., the FBI did not hesitate for a moment to tell to crowdsource the investigation, to tell everybody to look hard, squint into the eyes of your friends and family and loved ones about whether or not they may have been involved. They turned to about a dozen different Antifa groups, these sort of far left extreme groups that were used as a sort of secondary CIA, if you will, of these groups like Capitol Hunters and Sedition Hunters and Unicorn Riot were all basically a secondary FBI task force that were tapped into and whose information was used in federal indictments. Even groups like Bellingcat, who get direct funding from CIA cutouts like the National Endowment for Democracy, were tapped by the FBI. And here in this case, the FBI made the determination it was a lone gunman with no outside help the night the shooting happened, before they even opened the investigation. Then you have the strange situation with the Secret Service. The fact is the Secret Service was frankly, responsible for the January 6th pipe bomb at the DNC. They were supposed to be guarding Kamala Harris, the VIP, who we only learned a year after January 6th was actually at the DNC building under Secret Service protection when the bomb was discovered. And the bomb was on the front leg of the park bench at the entrance to the building. How can you miss that? And which begs. And while the Secret Service was covering that up, because the Secret Service ended up purging all of their cell phone data and text messages, so that once all this came out, no one could find out what the Secret Service was actually saying to each other on the events of January 6th, because they purged all the evidence. And while the Secret Service was purging the evidence of the January 6th pipe bomb situation, and again involving Kamala Harris, the FBI was covering up all the videotapes. While they were offering a reward, $50,000, $100,000, to catch the January 6th pipe bomber, they ended up cutting off the tape of the disclosed planting, who were told the pipe bomber who planted the bomb at the DNC building. They cut the stationary camera right before the person reaches into the bag to take the bomb out. They are asking us to identify the suspect, and then they cut off the tape right before the commission of the crime. What if it wasn't the same device? You have this 1-2 punch of the FBI and the Secret Service appearing to be, if not responsible, then at least responsible for the cover-up of two of the most insane terrorist or quasi-terrorist activities in modern American history.
Yeah, and anybody who would have seen my work on Mencius Moberg, the father, the son, and Mencius Moberg, that was published on Unlimited Hangout, you'll know that there was a Yale pipe bombing in 2003, which got quickly covered up. They put, you're not allowed to discuss it in the press, a D notice on it, and soon disappeared. Why always a pipe bomb? It's always very confusing.
Talk that matters. Johnny Vedmore on today's News Talk, TNT.